Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Throw Zone. I'm your host, Big Kev, and today we have a special video with the two-turn GOAT himself, the number two in NCAA history in the weight throw, the current NCAA champion in the 2025 indoor track and field weight throw, as well as the number 9 in world history in the weight throw, Daniel Reynolds. So, welcome to the Throw Zone.
Thanks for having me on.
No, thank you for hopping on the podcast. I know as a grad student, you're going to have a ton of stuff going on, especially we're in that little time zone where you're bouncing from indoor to outdoor and really just getting that class load going. But I really appreciate you being able to come on the podcast today.
I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. So I guess I just want to take this time to give a thank you to our sponsors. I firstly like to thank Lincoln Microphone. They provided the microphone system here in the Lincoln headquarters. So if you're in need of any custom microphone work or microphone repair, go onto the website. It'll be linked in the description below and get connected with them. And if you pay with Bitcoin, you can receive up to 50% off. So you might want to, utilize that. And then I also like to give a shout out to Shubert Cattle and Farms LLC. If you're looking to get some bigger numbers in the weight room, add a couple inches or maybe a couple feet to your throws, you need to fuel up with some high quality beef, half a cow, whole cow, whatever you're interested in, just give a DM to the Throw Zone and we'll get you in contact with them to get you some high quality beef. So now to get started here on this episode, we'll start off with Daniel. When did you start throwing?
Started throwing my freshman year of high school. Before then, I played a lot of baseball. I was really into that. And then everybody was telling me, you should try this thing called the shot put. You're strong enough, you're big enough, you probably do it. And at that point, I was kind of done with team sports. So transitioned into track my freshman year of high school and I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. So when you first started throwing, did you just focus on shot put or did you have to do the discus or any other events?
I was pretty small in high school, so I was more of a discus guy. I was kind of lanky. I never really liked the shot all that much. Occasionally, I'd figure out some things. I was a glider, so I was just kind of just trying to grip and rip the shot, and not being very big didn't work very well. One time, they put me in a 4x1, and I was the last guy to get the baton. And I remember looking back, looking forward. Everyone else had crossed the finish line, and then they gave me the baton, and that was the last time I ever ran on the tracks.
So that was your freshman year?
Yeah,
Oh, that's awesome. And that was a true 4x1. It wasn't like a throwers relay.
yeah, it was a true 4x1.
Man, that was my dream. I had to deal with our coach that I was going to get to run a 4x1 in one of our little, JV meets my senior year. But at that point, the idea of my hamstring may or may not cooperating well with that was kind of the peak of our concerns. And so I ended up never getting to fulfill that. So, maybe someday I'll go enter an open meet and run a 100 or something.
Oh, there you go.
You never know. We're not exactly built for that right now. Maybe a 60, but
Yeah.
yeah. So I guess going on your freshman year, did you have a lot of success right away with the shot put?
No, I didn't really have much success. That was the reason I was running in the 4x1 is I didn't qualify to throw in that meet, and by no means was that a big meet for high school or anything. My freshman year, I mean, like I said, it was small. I didn't really know what track was and what throwing was, so I was throwing in some tennis shoes and just I liked working out and I liked doing athletics, but I didn't really do anything crazy that year.
Yeah. And so when you said you liked working out, were you big into lifting at that point?
No, I really like, doing team sports and gym class and just kind of moving around. I really didn't discover the weight room and probably until after my junior year. So I was definitely behind the curve on that in high school.
Yeah. So then, I guess your freshman year, did you have any idea that you wanted to pursue throwing in college?
I knew I really liked the competition of track. I really liked the way it was set up, but my sights were pretty set on football for a really long time. So I didn't really consider it until my junior and senior year.
Yeah. And so you played football all throughout high school then?
Yeah.
Okay, so then I guess track and field is kind of like the for fun spring,
Yeah. Get
expeditioning.
strong.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, no, I feel like that's a very common thing you see with a lot of throwers where they were like I guess rarely basketball, but often football, either linemen or like some kind of like running back or defensive back, and looking for something to do in the spring. Sometimes I get some out of conditioning in the spring. That's what some of my friends did. But no. So I guess just going into your sophomore at that point, were you seeing a lot of improvement in your throws, or what did that look like?
Trying to remember back, I remember there was a big jump at the time for me. I went from like I think I threw 80 feet as a freshman in the disc, and then I threw 120 as a sophomore, which was really big for
Oh,
me because
yeah, no.
I'm trying to remember back. I don't remember my marks very well, but I guess kind of skipping that year, going in, I was really close to some school records, which was like 150 in the disc and 50 in the shot, and I threw 144 in the disc and 42 in the shot. And then COVID came around my senior year, so we never got uh
Never got
to
to see how
compete.
that unfolded.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I was lucky that I'm a year older, so I had COVID my freshman year. So I kind of got a taste of college, indoor season, and then we got sent home and that whole little reset and figuring out the routine of things. But I guess going into your senior year track season, did you know you're going to throw in college at that point, or was that something that kind of unfolded throughout the whole COVID?
That was something that kind of unfolded. I think I went on a few visits, and I remember I signed really late with Shadron, but it was definitely I was considering track more my senior year than football because I mean there was a few small schools that were like, yeah, maybe you could do both because that's what I wanted to do at first was both, and just going to some of those smaller schools that they weren't really a good fit for me.
Yeah. And then you grew up in Colorado, right?
Yep.
So were you
Granby,
in like a
Colorado.
big, so is that like a bigger area or more of like a smaller?
It's a small area up in the mountains. I can't remember how many people were up there when I was in high school. It's definitely exploded now because it's kind of a touristy area. We got ski resorts and hunting and all that kind of fun stuff. Yeah, just up in the mountains in Colorado.
Yeah. So with your background being from there, were you looking more at going somewhere more of a small town feeling or close to home, or what was the big factor that brought you over to Nebraska?
Yeah, it was just kind of that smaller feeling and having that opportunity to get a scholarship there. I don't think I would do very well in a big city with lots of people. I like going outdoors and spending my time outside, and I can't really deal with the hustle and bustle of the city. So Chadron was a good fit.
Yeah. No, it's kind of reminds me of my episode with Roger Steen. He was talking about when he was in New York how he just hated it. He likes places where there are more trees than people, and
Yeah.
he said the tree to people ratio was very upside down for what he's comfortable with. So he was in and out of there.
Oh, yeah. Up here, there's more antelope than people. So
Yeah. So then, are you a big outdoorsman?
yeah, yeah. I mean, my grad degree is all range wildlife management, and I love spending time hunting and fishing and just getting outside as much as I can.
So on an ideal day, let's say it's in the off season, there's no throwing going on. Where would we find Daniel?
I'd definitely be at a lake or something, or going and getting my bow tuned up, or just being outside. Even doing field work is great for me. Just go out on the ranch and do what I need to do for school, but just enjoy my time being out there.
Yeah. No, it's nice to hear other people's hobbies. Like going around, you don't see anyone besides like they're a thrower or this is what they've done in the weight room. You don't really get to have that real like personification of like, besides those couple hours a day where we're at meets or throwing or lifting to where a lot of like our like media is seeing us. So, there's a whole other side to everyone. Yeah. So then let's see, you went to Shattern State and then you ended up staying there for what was 3 years or so. And so what was the transition like going from high school into the college system for throwing?
I mean, I was never really all that great in high school. So I think that made my transition a little bit easier because I know a lot of kids will get into a college program after winning everything in high school and then have a really hard time kind of going up in levels. But I never was like super dominant in high school, so it was pretty typical for me. I remember talking to my dad on my phone and being like, "This is a whole different ball game now." I just kind of decided, keep my head down and work as hard as I could and try to get to that level of the upperclassmen at Shadron.
Yeah. And so when you I guess you switched from like the 12 to the 16, and all the implements went up in weight. Did you switch to spin at that point, or do you stick to gliding?
I'm trying to remember when I switched over. It was either my first or second year at Shadron. I'd have to go back and look. I'm not sure. It was one of those 2 years, and that was ridiculous. Was not coordinated at all. Wasn't very big, and trying to do the rotation like that was just not great. So it took some
Yeah,
time.
yeah. Going from boys shot to the college men's shot, and switching from glide to spin is not a very easy task. That's something that I understand because I went through it. But a lot of high school kids out there just are that first couple months of transitioning to college are rough
Yeah.
because everything that's familiar is gone. It's not like, oh, I threw the same weight. I kind of know what the front of the ring feels like. Or it's, I know what the technique feels like, but the ball's a little heavier. But we just had neither of those options. It's okay. It's still a shot put. You have to throw it forward. It comes out of your neck, but everything else is gone.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And did you have any interest in throwing the hammer, the weight throw right away, or when did that come into play?
Yeah, so when I got there, the upperclassmen were kind of doing some workouts and throws before the season started, and they took the freshmen out and gave us a hammer. We weren't supposed to even be out there, but they gave us a hammer and were like started kind of show us the turns and see what we could do with it. And I remember picking it up, and first time I turned, I had the hammer, I had my hands above my head like this, and I never
Of course.
I never really figured out how to get them down, but I just picking that up, I knew like I really liked it. I liked it just felt like more natural to me, even though it was just this weird thing that I've never heard of. And yeah, I just kind of I took a liking to it really early on.
Yeah, that's. Do you think anything with your like baseball background helped out with that in terms of just how you have to extend through the hips at the end of the throw?
Um, it could have. I've never thought of it that way, but definitely it could have been a possibility.
Yeah, when I first, I guess, picked up the hammer, it was probably my junior year of high school. I just started doing club track. It was more of, it was a family friend coaching us, and he was a good coach. And his son actually, I think at one point had the hammer record for Nebraska, and he had my high school shot put record, and they like helped me out a ton. And they had a hammer, like, oh, let's try this. And I was the same, like arms
Yeah.
folded back, trying to swing it around. And I probably did 5 winds before I let go of the silly thing. And I felt so good, and I was so pumped. Except it was like 90 feet or something around those lines, and a little 12 pounder. And I really enjoyed it at that point. And I guess the next year I did it again before my senior year, that summer vacation, and I did one turn, and then I decided that was too hard, so I just wind up harder and let go again. Yeah, and then college hit, and I could care less about the hammer. I was more determined to figure out how am I going to spin a circle and throw this little silly shot put.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
definitely entertaining watching kids pick up that hammer for the first time and seeing
I,
what
I
they
en-
come up with.
especially going on like Instagram or TikTok where you see like a new thrower, someone typically like early high school, that they pick up the hammer because they like throwing and they know that's another option for them, and they're like, how's my technique looking? And it's just this super bent elbow swinging like this. And
Yeah.
no, everyone's been there at one point, so
Oh
it's
yeah.
kind of a rite of passage. Kind of like when you first start throwing like the discus and like the middle school, early high schoolers, how you like they wind like all the time where they
Oh yeah.
pull back. Yeah, it's kind of the rite of passage with that.
Yep, definitely.
But I guess throw much discus your first year when you started at Shattern State.
Yeah, we threw disc, I think through my junior year at Chadron. I was throwing it a little bit more early on because I was kind of skinny and lanky still. And then as time went on and hammer got a little better, we kind of focused more on hammer and shot.
Yeah, and did you notice any differences in the weight room in terms of like your training based on what you were doing in high school that were really beneficial?
Yeah, I mean, I think the big thing was just like having a consistent schedule because I would lift with my lineman coach and in high school, and we would have a pretty normal routine, but just having that structure of this is practice now, and you have to do this every week and a certain amount of times per week, that was huge. I was never really big my freshman year of college, and then when I went home my that freshman year, I just ate and lifted as much as I could. I was working at a a furniture delivery store. So I was just moving furniture, eat, and then lift, and then do it all again the next day. And I got quite a bit bigger between those 2 years.
Yeah, no, you got some cross training there with moving furniture. That's not really an easy task. I would say that that's almost kind of strongman training right there.
Yeah. And you're moving a sofa sleeper up the 6 flight of stairs. You're feeling it quite a bit.
Yeah. No, it's funny you mentioned that. One of my best friends was moving yesterday, and so I went out and helped him. And he was on the third floor of his apartment, and we were moving to just another complex in the little subdivision, and it was on the second floor. So it was a lot of picking something up, walking down, across, up, set it down. And I didn't go to the gym yesterday because I knew that if I did any front squats or something like I was planning on doing, that it was not going to be a good day for me.
Yeah.
But honestly, it was a good day for a little strongman workout.
Yeah. Hit some muscles you haven't hit in a while.
Yeah, well, it's a lot, you're holding, carrying, and
Yeah.
my biggest problem is I have a big chest and I have short arms, so my ability to hug things, to carry them, is not super good,
Yeah.
and so that makes it just has to put like that much more effort in. I think it was a good little training day, and I could totally see how that plus regular like training routines, how you could get like a lot bigger right away for that.
Yeah.
So I guess at the end of that, I guess like summer for you, did you notice any significant jumps in your main lifts that following fall?
Yeah. I'm trying to remember the program exactly. He sent us a one just for that summer, and it was a lot higher intensity, and it was kind of more heavyweight for higher reps. And the way he set that program up, it just kind of stepped you up throughout the whole summer. So it wasn't like I was doing these huge jumps. It was just kind of a little bit every day and every week. And then comparing that to where I started and where I ended with that summer, it was a big jump.
No, I bet that, especially if you didn't have a super strong background in that area, I can totally see how that would really boost. And so, did you see any big jumps in the shot put that following fall then?
I think I threw, it was like 12 meters my freshman year. And then I think I only jumped up to like 13 or 14 that year in the shot. I still trying to figure out how to rotate, how to actually, I think we switched to a reverse then because I had never reversed in anything. And it really wasn't clicking for me like the hammer and weight were.
Yeah. And so then, I guess at that point, was your main focus just on the hammer, or are you still trying to do everything?
At that point, I was still trying to kind of be competitive in everything. I think that was kind of true until my junior year later on, where I was like, all right, I can't be great at everything. I can specialize in something and be okay at something else.
Yeah. And so I think that's also really important where a lot of kids will come out of high school and see success, and maybe they throw the disc far, the shot far, and the hammer far. And then when college hits, there's so much more that has to go with it that unfortunately, you only have 24 hours in a day. You have quizzes, tests, class. You have to do your rehab, sleep, eat. There's only so much you can do. And I think there comes a point where you kind of have to, here's my top dog, here's my little side hustle, and the other stuff just has to be for fun at that point.
Yeah, I think you get like the way the program I'm in now is like you only have so much energy to do so much. Like when I'm really focusing on weight, I can still have a little bit, or I guess for an outdoor situation, if I'm really focusing on hammer, I still have a little bit for shot. But then at that point for discus, at least in this program, it's like we don't really have the energy or the capacity to really focus on something that we're
Yeah,
not amazing
you'd
at.
have to give up somewhere for that.
Yeah.
No, I think that's always pretty a good idea to have like your primary event when you train, and then have like your secondary event afterwards, and then you can kind of flip flop that. That's at least how training's gone for me. Not that I trained the discus or anything. This my last season with Nebraska, we decided that I was done throwing discus. We, as in coach and
Yeah.
and I was totally fine with that. Discus just hurts me. I'm very stiff, not super flexible, and the discus just I felt like everything was going to get torn: hamstrings, quads, hips, bicep, everything. And I didn't find out until the Wednesday before our conference meet that I was throwing the discus, and it was the only reason why I found out is I looked at the entries and I found my name on the sheet. Yeah, so I wouldn't say I trained the two events or anything, but at one point my freshman year I did. So
Yeah.
I understand the grouping and how to prioritization for practice works. So,
Yeah.
but I guess we kind of just talked a little bit about like that's what you're doing now at Wyoming, and so you ended up transferring your was it at the end of your third year to go to Wyoming.
Yeah.
What was the transition like going from a Division II school to a bigger Division I school?
It was pretty big. Knew my marks were good enough to kind of get me where I wanted to go. I wanted to be closer to home. It was a big jump up, especially last year. Like I was pretty competitive in D2, and then D1, I didn't even make nationals in weight. And I've always been told like well, when I was kind of moving, they said you would need a year to get under the program and really figure it out and kind of get that base. And last year, not making it to nationals and in the weight was kind of like I didn't understand at the time, but I needed that as my base in this training to kind of fully immerse myself in it. But I mean, there's definitely levels to track, and it's really eye-opening when you have that opportunity to kind of step up, like, going from high school not being very good to D2, then working your way up D2, and then you kind of start all over again at D1, and then you kind of just keep growing. So
Yeah, what do
I
you think
definitely.
the biggest change that you noticed was? And it could be anything in terms like campus size or just anything training related.
I think the biggest thing is just your average competition is a lot higher, and then your like higher level competition in that division is much, much higher. So, I mean, occasionally you get guys at D2 that would definitely give some D1 guys a run for their money, but just having those resources like D2 schools have good weight rooms and good cafeterias, but it seems like there's another level at D1. We've got our nutrition station here. We've got the, our own trainers for track. It's not the whole athletic department. We've got like weight room, much nicer. We've got, I think, three of them. So just kind of all those factors kind of give you an extra edge.
Yeah. And then I guess I want to also take a moment to kind of elaborate. You mentioned that even there's some like D2 throwers that could give a lot of the D1 throwers a run for their money. And I think that's 100% true. Even if you look at some of the top like Division III or NAIA or Division II guys, like there are some very talented kids out there, even not even just the throws. Like I know there's a couple high jumpers in Division II that are phenomenal, and as well as some of the other events. And a lot of people are so caught up in I need to go D1 or like the other ones aren't as good, or like a lot of comparisons in that aspect. But at the end of the day, no matter where you go, there's the top competition is still the top competition, and just
Yeah.
kind of go where you feel you belong, and everything will come with that.
Yeah. I think like there are great opportunities no matter where you're at. I think D1 gives you almost an easier path because you don't have to grind quite as hard to like, they're taking care of your nutrition. You can go talk to somebody here where at D2, like there's kind of more steps around it. Like you're paying for your protein powder, you're like if you need recovery tubs or whatever, you have to go do that on your own. Where D1 it's kind of provided for you and it makes that much easier than those lower levels. And of course, there's big variation in the funding in different schools and different divisions.
Oh yeah, especially like implements and stuff like that. Like you're not gonna find a money ball lying around outside a Division I campus right now. But and for those who don't know what that is, that's a type of weight throw that's made that's very nice and it's very expensive.
Yeah,
And yeah, it's kind of like, in high school, there's always that kid that wouldn't let anyone throw his discus because he wanted to break it. That's kind of how everyone feels about these for the weight throw that you don't touch. That's for that school.
absolutely.
Yeah, but no, I'm glad you mentioned like the little stuff that comes with Division I. Like in my experience at Nebraska, like we had just about any type of thing that I would do. There was a whole staff that was in that whole area. There was a whole department. What I mean by that is like, oh, you need to work on like coming back from an injury. Oh, we have this sports science lab, and there was a time my freshman year that they put those. You know when you do like animation, how you have like sometimes actors wear like the little dot suits and so they can track their movement. They had something like that done, some throwers, and they did like some 3D renderings of their skeleton and showed like how their body moves differently, even though they're both throwing the shot put. Like think about like that's just one little small area, and it's like oh, then there's also the dietitians that have a whole department, and all these little areas in Division One, compared to a lot of the other schools don't have those luxuries. But as you said, at the end of the day, that just means the other guys just have to work harder. Not that they're not capable.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, so I think that's 100% something that a lot of kids should be on the lookout for when they're looking at going to college for throwing. That you don't exactly need to go with the biggest name you could find, more of just trying to find what works best for your situation and just kind of buying in and working your tail off, and then the rewards will come with that. So I guess kind of going back to your story here. And so you said like first year underneath a new program, new like coach, new, everything. At what point did you feel, I guess, the beginning of this year that everything was clicking and that you understand you're in the groove?
Yeah, so this summer I leaned down pretty good and I was worried. I was like, I'm not sure if I'm the right weight or if my strength is where it needs to be. This fall we came in and just started hitting really big numbers in the weight room. I mean, I have a great relationship with my coach, just being in that environment. We had a feeling something good was going to happen. I started putting weight back on. I started hitting much bigger numbers. And then I think that early meet kind of gave us a glimpse of what could happen. We kind of buckled down over Christmas break and lifted really heavy and got really strong and then opened up. There was still things that we needed to fix with the technique, but it seemed like the strength was there, and if we can keep running with it and keep getting our throws a little bit further and piecing things together, it just kind of worked out that way.
Yeah, and so speaking of technique, we actually had a question, our little Q&A we did in our story the other day, that we had someone ask on why did you decide to do 2 turns in your throw compared to 3 or 4?
So we kind of messed around with the 3 turn last year. That was kind of what we were gonna go with. I can't toe turn really. It just doesn't make sense to me. I've always been a heel turner. And then last year we took a couple 2 turns at some meets. Just with my style of throwing, it's a little less technical, more kind of grip and rip, violent, explosive. It just kind of worked better for me to stay in the ring. I could get my power and speed up really quickly and get it done with the 2. So we didn't really feel like we needed to do the 3 turn yet. And then we just kind of ran with it. It was working.
Yeah, if it's not broke, don't fix it. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and on another thing you kind of mentioned about just staying in the ring and stuff like that, the 2 turn was a lot easier. That's exactly what Peyton Otterdahl was talking about on one of our first episodes here. He mentioned that he also experimented with trying to do a 3 turn, or I don't think he ever said anything about 4 turns, but it was like a 50-50 shot or something around those lines of, am I going to stay in the ring? And unfortunately in our sport, you kind of have to stay in the ring. There's not like oh, sorry guys, look the other way. Which that would be kind of cool if we got like a step or 2 out of there. Who knows?
Just subtract it from your distance.
Yeah, exactly. I think is that World Athletics has some kind of change in. I think it's World Athletics. Like they're thinking about doing long jump that way, where instead of you have like a flight zone or something like that. Imagine we had that for the throws, where it's just wherever you're like. The end of your foot or big toe or wherever, the end of your throw, that's where they measure from. That could be really interesting because you don't have to worry about control as much.
Right. I think you'd kind of run into the same thing if you extended the circle a little bit. There's still going to be people just kind of pushing right at that line, and I don't know. It could be. I mean, there's a few where I've stepped out and been like, man, that would have been a huge throw, but
Yeah, no, exactly. So who knows? Maybe we can have like another rule set like that for the weight throw or hammer, kind of similar to the American Shot Put Leagues, kind of shaking things up
yeah.
for their shot put rules, which I've been saying for months it'd be so fun to have a track meet for throws, ran like high jump.
Yeah.
Where you have like okay, here's your qualifying round. So like hammer 60 meters, and then it kind of bounces in like 2 meter increments or 5 meters depending on time. I think that's a fantastic idea. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, that'll be super interesting to watch.
Yeah, and actually we'll be there to record and or live stream depending on the rules and all that. We're lucky enough that Des Moines not that far away, and my fiance and I are all set up to go and record some fun content for that. So that would be fun to kind of show that new style of competition. But I guess kind of going back here to talk about the weight throw. Do you feel that there's a certain lift in the weight room that you've been doing that has a correlation to your overall throw?
Yeah, I think the hang clean is the biggest. I mean, it's pretty similar. Like even power cleans or snatches, which we don't do right now, are I think directly correlated to weight and hammer.
Yeah. But what would you say would be your like top three most important exercises for throwing the weight for people that are just getting started in that?
Well, we do 3 lifts a week. We do front squat, hang clean, and bench.
Bench.
Yeah, I'm not too good on the training side on how to tell you exactly how things correlate, but you don't really need a massive bench press to throw the hammer or the weight. It's not really involved, but those cleans and front squats, absolutely.
Yeah. Then do you do much back squats or is it mostly for the front squats?
We do front squats and then back squat in the summertime.
Back squat. No, that's interesting. There's been a lot of different reels and different Instagram articles I've seen recently talking about the importance of doing a front squat compared to a back squat for the throws.
It seems like it gets you the front squat gets you in that power position of the hammer. That's kind of my take on it, but
No, that makes a lot of sense. But the cleans, that makes a ton of sense. I think
yeah.
if I had to pick one lift that I think a lot of like high school or even like if you're in the right areas of middle school to where you have someone that can monitor and make sure you're doing things correctly, I honestly think probably the cleans 100% most beneficial for throwing. That's always been something that I felt helped me a lot was getting my clean up helped everything else.
Yeah. I think any really power sport, your cleans are going to be the biggest factor.
Yeah, and that's something that I think a lot of sports, even like your football, basketball, anything that you're going to find yourself in a position where you need to have triple extension, I think that's something a lot of like youth athletics needs to kind of add into their regimen for training. It's not just 3x8 on squats with some dumbbells, do some
Yep.
dumbbell bench, shoulder press, and call it a day.
Yeah. I mean, I get
But
why they don't with the safety and the training, but if you're going to take it seriously, you're definitely going to want to get those cleans somewhere in there.
exactly. And even if I've been coaching some middle schoolers and we had a little weight room day, and I was trying to think of how I could manage to get that triple extension. And to my experience so far, I found if you have them do like dumbbell jumps, where you
Yeah.
have your like dumbbells at your side where you can crouch down, they get that triple extend. You're not really getting the pull or anything like that, but you're still getting that whole system of loading up at the bottom and jumping. So there's a way to figure out how to get that little, I guess, feeling for younger athletes.
Definitely get creative with it.
Exactly. And that's one thing I think throwers do a really good job about, where a lot of our little accessories for drills and all that are exactly something you could just order online. It's just a series of, it's like, okay, we got a broom, we got a band, and I got a post. Okay, how can we make this beneficial for the hammer?
Definitely.
So,
Yeah.
I guess regarding that, are there any crazy drills that you really thought helped you in the weight throw that you think younger kids that are just getting started in that would benefit from?
I think not really right now, but in high school, what really helped me is we did speed ladders, speed hurdles, jump rope, box jump, and that stuff really kind of helps with that those stabilizer muscles, and just getting that explosive power off the ground. Especially for younger athletes, I feel like that's a really good thing you can use, and they're not expensive, and you don't really have to pay for any of those. So yeah,
No, yeah, I think that's a good option. That's something that I think I really worked on a couple years ago. We had a whole little circuit we would do. It was like our Tuesday ritual before lifting where we had to do all sorts of little, single leg stuff, double leg hops, bounds, all that type of fun stuff.
yeah.
But I guess kind of moving on here, we're talking about the two turn. The other, I guess, we had another question out there that said, "What does it feel like to be the two turn goat?" That was also in there.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, no, it's honestly, it was so cool to watch someone two turn and throw so far. It's one of those you don't see it very much. It's kind of like watching a good glider, like for example, like CJ over at South Carolina, seeing him
Yeah.
throw over 20 all the time. It's really cool for a lot of those younger high school kids to have someone to look up to that can do that. And so a lot of kids getting started the weight, they can look at you and say and know like, okay, I can't three turn or four turn, but what someone else is doing really good. Like I have that potential.
Yeah. I mean,
So yeah, so
there's so many different like body styles and in track and field, and especially in the throws, like you go to any meet and nobody looks the same. They're not built the same. So a lot of it is just kind of catering to how you move, your training and your body, and the two turn just kind of worked for me. Like I'm not saying a three turn or four turn's bad, but it just the way I was training, the way ball felt, it was just
Exactly.
worked for
Just
me.
yeah, that's something that I feel like is there's more people talking about that of you can't just find someone you admire in terms of like throwing in terms of their technique and just try to like copy paste and do exactly what they're doing. Like for example, not too many people are going to be as tall as Krauser or have the flexibility and mobility he does to throw the way he does. You see stuff like that, and then you see people try to really replicate like Joe Kovacs, and you see how he throws, but are you able to squash 750 for 8 or whatever he posted the other day? It's a lot of people kind of forget the little extras that go into it where you can't just, watch a reel, say, sick, I'm going to do that,
Yeah.
and turn around and replicate it. I think that's something that everyone just needs to kind of, find their own thing. Like there's like I know all the people that want to be like Big Kev and throw like me in the shot put. I'm sure that a lot of you are listening right now. You can't do that. Like you have to figure out like how can I throw the best? Like what do I have that works and is most natural for me, which will put him in a better position for success.
Yeah. It's not a cookie cutter sport. There's not a perfect way to do it.
Exactly. And I always talk about at Nebraska, I think it was a couple years ago, our four shot putters were very different in sizes. We had Alex Talley, who's a little under 6 foot tall, and he still threw like over 20 in the shot, And then we had a guy. We had five of us. We had Nick. Nick's another tall guy, like 6'2", and then we had me at the median height at 6'5", Berger at 6'6" and a half. We had Max around 6'8", 6'9", depending if he did his stretches that day. And like all of us, we none of us looked the same when we throw. Everyone had just looked a little different, but we all various sizes all had like we all play the same sport. We all do the same thing. I always thought that was kind of funny about like five people that if we were playing like basketball, we would all play the position in basketball. I would obviously be the point guard for my 3-point abilities, but so that's one thing I think that throwing just does a great job on, where anyone could do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, so I guess kind of moving on here. So at the beginning of this season, did you have a feeling that it was going to be a big year for you after that first couple of meets?
Yeah, I knew it was going to be pretty big. It's my last year in college, and um, weights were moving really good. The weight was moving good at practice. I had some really big throws, and we knew it was going to get bigger. It was just a matter of, you know, piecing our training together, the technique together, and then the timing of the meet. We knew it was going to be pretty big. I don't know if we knew how big it was going to be, but
I actually, I can't remember. I was on your coach's account that the videos of you throwing the weight, where you have your teammates with the foam mats, who their
yeah.
job, protect everything from going out of the barricade, and they just throw the foam mats. That cracked me up watching that.
Well, that goes back to that money ball is pretty expensive, and we've got metal barriers. And so we noticed a ding on it, I think the first meet after we got it, and then we started using those foam pads to kind of stop that from breaking and making it through the season because those metal barriers
Yeah,
are rough.
yeah. The last thing a coach wants to see is the part of you throwing like huge training PB or something like that. All excited, and oh, there it goes. Our
There.
implement blows
Yeah.
up. No, that's the sad thing about throwing is, our equipment is really expensive for some of the nicer products. And then what do? We throw it.
Yep.
Like we try to test its durability. It's always sad, especially like the indoor stuff. Like we had a series of indoor shots that just it felt like every week we had a new shot just blow up on the little sector there.
Yeah. That was like that kid from Wisconsin at Nationals. I think he was from Wisconsin. His weight hit the ground and it blew up at Nationals. Like that must have been a horrible feeling. At least probably all the money balls in the country were there at the time. But
Yeah, no,
yeah,
exactly. That's well, at least it got to the Nationals with it. It
yeah,
wasn't
yeah,
like some kind of other like that. That was the end of the season for it. They had some time to go get a new one figured out.
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and so then also you also had some big improvements to the shot put this season
Yeah.
because that was about what 2 meter PR this year.
Yeah, that was big. But we've kind of decided is our little side project that we kind of mess around with, throw a shot once a week. Um, and I still have a hard time staying in the ring with the shot. I like to pull my head forward and pull my chest over the toe board and step out. Mm, So I really like I didn't throw I threw a decent shot the home meet, held out Montana meet, didn't throw a shot much after that. And then we got to the conference meet and that week before we we've got our little dungeon is what we call it, and it's this little throw sector downstairs with mats that we throw shot into. It's a little it works for me because I my eyes get me in trouble in all my throws, but when we're downstairs, it's just hit the mat, so I'm not trying to see how far it goes or
Yep.
whatever. I can just focus on staying in the ring. And that week before, there was a few practices where I was staying in. I was like, well, maybe we might be able to do something. And then I just kind of went into shot put at the meet, just super relaxed. I was like, not like for weight, I get really amped up. I got loud music going on and like caffeine, everything getting going. And then in the shot, it was just kind of like, all right, I'm just gonna kind of see if I can get through the ring. Coach was like, if it doesn't look good, we're not gonna throw. If you're not feeling good, you're not gonna throw. And it wasn't looking like I was gonna throw at that meet. And I was like, just give me one in competition. It feels okay. We'll see if I can hit something. And it just happened to put the positions together and hit a big one. The power was there from our weight trainings. That was kind of cool for a little side
Yeah,
project.
yeah, no, I've had a lot of conversations with Ponzio and Peyton too, talking about how the weight throw could be so beneficial for the shot put as a training tool. But it's unique in your situation of that's your baby, that's what you're working on, and the shot put just gets all the free benefits from getting the weight mastered. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
no, that's
going
really
from a
interesting with that.
two-turn weight throw to a shot put, it might actually be detrimental to me because trying to get your speed up really quickly in the weight, you can't really bring that over, at least for me in the shot, because it'll just pull me right out of the ring every time. I'll go flying in all different directions. So I gotta kind of reset from weight. Yeah, I get the strength and power from weight and then get to use it in the shot, but definitely have to switch modes for that.
Yeah, I always felt something like that situation. I would say like the weight throws kind of like when you go into a max squat of you can bring out your smelling salts, smack yourself around, get amped up, and just grip and rip like you're going for it. And then the shot put, it's always like the hang clean max out. My professional experience where you have to have that intensity and that energy up here,
Mhm.
but if it breaks through here and everything is going in the wrong spots, it's not going to be a good day.
Yeah. Need a lot more
But
control.
exactly, and that's something that I had to work on my last couple of years. We're experimenting on okay, there's 300 milligrams of caffeine, and do we need that? And
Yeah.
then that turned into we do not need that, and then it's no caffeine compared to like something a little lighter like a Red Bull. Kind of just finding that little sweet spot.
Right.
Yeah. But you mentioned something about your blasting your music, and that was kind of the vibe to get going on the weight throw. What kind of music could we catch you listening to?
Definitely like rock music, just loud and upbeat, and like I really like all kinds of music, but I think for the weight it's definitely rock and just got my earbuds all the way up. Occasionally I'll throw in some like upbeat country or country rock, and I think if you look at my Instagram, you can get a feel for what kind of music I like.
So, how much further do you think you would have thrown if they could have played anything by Nickelback while you were throwing the weight throw?
I mean, really any rock music at that time would have been awesome. Like that would have gave me a little bit more for sure.
Yeah, I actually I saw a reel the other day that there was some gym, and it was obviously kind of like a joke, but they had a death metal band perform
Yeah.
at some gym, and it was people lifting, and it was just like the death metal screams of the microphone and the heavy guitar shredding. That might be the X factor for future competitions.
Yeah.
Some if you think about the intensity of energy and you go to like a concert of all like the guitars, the music blasting, if we could channel that and add the throws into that, yeah, that's what we need. That's what we need to. That's the next big step for the throws. We need to add that in there.
We need to hire officials and then death metal bands every
Yeah,
meet.
exactly. No, we could have it switched out. We could have Creed one day, Nickelback the next, all
Oh
the
yeah.
big dogs.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I guess kind of going into the end of your indoor season for what we were just talking about. Are you someone that gets nervous when you throw it all, or has any issues with that? Or are you pretty able just to get in the zone?
So I used to get really nervous before I threw. Like it would just kind of mess me up. And then like past 2 years we've kind of just been working on that mental side of things. And if you don't get nervous, you shouldn't be there. There's nerves involved in any sport. And going into the national meet, I was nervous. Like I had never been ranked top dog for anything of that caliber ever. So I was curious to see if I was gonna have pressure of, I'm going in first, I need to leave first. And that really never came across. But like I remember just sitting in the hotel room, like I'm nervous, like you don't know how any meet will go. Like there you could tweak something, somebody could have a great day, somebody could have a bad day. There could be other things that kind of influence that. So that's kind of all on my mind before going in and competing. And then, you get to the meet, you get your music in, block all that out, get in the ring, feel the ring. At that point, I wasn't really nervous. I felt good. I felt like we set our peak really nicely for our training. So I was confident. I was confident in throwing over 80 consistently. So like once I got to the ring, I wasn't nervous, but it was kind of that build up and the anticipation. I don't know if that was nerves or excitement, but that definitely was there, but I was able to block it out and kind of walk in.
Then, do you have any specific strategies you use to help stay focused in those moments?
I'm really competitive, so there's nothing I really need to do to like block in at that time. Like I know it's time to go. Like I just kind of flip the switch and got my music going and I'm locked in. So
Yeah, no, that's completely understandable. I had that feeling that you were going crazy this year after the last couple throws. It definitely, you could tell that you have the it factor of you could flip that switch and you're in the zone. And I think that's something that a lot of kids, high school, middle school, even college, that's something they need to work on finding. Where if you can get to that, I guess, like the idea of you have that mental switch to flip. I know there's a lot of different like psychology involved with that whole aspect. Eddie Hall actually had a whole like study done. I don't know if you're too familiar with his 500 kilo deadlift, but because that was probably my favorite lift I've ever watched videos of or
yeah,
studied. Just the build up. Eddie Hall talks about it. You can find it on YouTube. He's posted a lot of videos about it. But he actually met with a whole bunch of like sports psychs and even, I believe, like a hypnotist or something around those lines. And he was able to wire his brain to have that switch to flip to where he needed to get the competition. He had like a trigger. He had to like pinch himself. And there's a whole lot more than just that went into it. But this little a brief, short version here,
yeah,
that where if he like pinched himself on the arm just right, that was like himself telling him that, okay, it's go time. Like, you're not who you were 10 seconds ago. Like, you're
right.
in the zone now. I think that's something that, like, for me, I always thought as soon as I get that the Velcro shut on my roadie strap, before every throw, I'd hear it click. It was okay. It's go time. We're not.
Yeah.
Yeah, that big goofball. 10 seconds ago, you're not him anymore. You're locked in.
Absolutely. And I really struggled with that for a long time. And what I found this year is like, well, this and last year, like I used to always pay attention to other people and like what they were doing before and like what they were saying. And then that seemed to be the fuel to kind of distraction and uncertainty, where if you just kind of block them out and kind of go into your own zone and into your own mind, you don't have those external factors kind of messing with you. And that's like we were talking about that transition from high school to college is mental is a huge part because a lot of kids like winning so much and then not winning, it kills them. But just to be able to kind of learn how to think a little bit better through your competition and set up and kind of get into that zone is huge.
Yeah, and kind of building that too, depending on where you're from, you might be the biggest dog in your city or county or whatever area you're competing in, and used to what like your worst day is better than everyone else's best day. And then as soon as you get into the ballpark of your best day, might not be as good as so and so's best day, and that knowing that if you're not on your A game, you are probably not gonna win right away. And a lot of people, that's really hard for them to get used to, and so that's a big change. Yeah, but I guess we're start kind of wrapping things up here. So kind of went over like going through the end of your championship season here. So as you said, this is your final outdoor season. Is there anything we should be on the lookout? Will we see a two-turn of the hammer?
You will not see a two turn the hammer. I will be
Oh
two
man,
turning the hammer.
Dang it. We can only
My
hope.
my teammate Colt will be two-turning the hammer, but not me. Um, yeah, I mean, we're still in that transition period. It's a big difference going from a two-turn weight to a three-turn hammer. Hammer's very technical. We're working on that transition. There's some good things that I've seen so far, but still feel like it's pretty early. I'm excited to see what we can do with it.
Awesome. Well, I'm definitely excited to be following along, and we'll post some more rankings in the near future. I'm excited to see all the big throws coming out of Wyoming. But I guess as we're kind of wrapping things up here, do you have any words of advice that you would give to aspiring throwers that are looking to get started throwing the weight?
Mine would just be, keep your head down and work hard, and hard work will pay off. It may not seem like it at the time, but eventually it will. Even if it doesn't pay off in the sports realm, it'll pay off in life and in some other aspect for sure. So,
Yeah, no, that's well said. But that is everything for this week's episode of The Throw Zone. Go right on over and remember to subscribe if you're on YouTube, follow if you're on the different streaming services, give us a like, a comment, maybe even comment who you'd like to see on the podcast in the future. And also remember, go give Daniel a follow on all his social medias and watch the rest of his collegiate journey. And that is all for this week's episode. So we'll see you on the next one.
thanks for having me.